Hello everyone and welcome back to the Academia Research Collective. My name is Darren and today we will be talking about the abstract. The abstract is a quintessential part of any research project, and if you want to conduct academia and research, well, then you're definitely going to need the right one. So let's get straight into it. Firstly, what is an abstract? Well, an abstract is basically just your entire research project condensed down into one short paragraph. If you want to pause the video, you can read this abstract on screen. It's the text in bold. This is actually my abstract from a UFSSTP project, and I made a whole video on that just a few videos ago on this channel, so go check that out. But basically, an abstract is just that. It's just a summary of your entire project. And so, apart from being just a summary, though, it's basically everything condensed down, right? It includes everything: your problem, methodology, data, results, implications, conclusions. It's everything smushed into 100 and 250 words long. And that's the golden spot as well. It's 150 to 250 words long. Because if you're a bit less than that, you're probably not being super detailed or not enough detail for the abstract. And if you're over that, then you're probably being way too wordy. And so that's the golden spot. And this is basically what an abstract is. Now, why do you want to have an abstract? Well, it's the first section that people always read in a research paper. That's generally what they read first. Back in our literature review video from our Introduction to Research series, we talked about that when you're going over research papers, you might want to just skim the abstract to see if that paper is useful to you. And that's what a lot of people do. If they're reading your paper, they can read the abstract and be like, oh, this is pretty useful to my research, or maybe it's not so useful. But if it's useful to them, then maybe they'll end up citing your research. Or if they're just trying to learn something, they can just go through your abstract and be like, oh, okay, so this is the major things about this research project. It's just a quick summary so that it's nice and informative. And when people read the abstract, a lot of times they ask themselves, do I want to read your entire paper? Is it relevant to what they're doing? If yes, that's great. If not, that's okay. They can move on. And it's a large overview of your entire project. Now, here are the 5 essential parts of any good abstract. You need to have a background in the problem, purpose and goal, methodology, results, conclusion, and implications. And you don't have to structure all of those into like neat little sections. Like on the example on the right-hand side, they only have 4 sections technically, but the purpose and the goal is kind of smushed in the background part as well. But you can see on the example on the right-hand side, right, we have a background. They introduce the background and the problem, and they want to talk about like prediction tools that combine polygenic risk scores. The purpose and goal is also there as well to talk about how they can like improve those predictions and preventions of cardiovascular disease, and they also want to try to solve the issue of polygenic risk scores being unclear. Then they go on to the methodology. They talk about how they have a cohort of 7,300 or so individuals. They test them and whatnot, and then they go on to the results section. They give some percentages, they give some significant statistical analyses, and then they go to the conclusions where they conclude the research and talk about the implications. That is perfect. This is a perfect abstract. It goes over everything that you need. If I didn't know anything about this project after reading this abstract, I have a pretty good idea of what the paper will be talking about and whether it will be useful to me or not. Now, one of the best things, and something I've emphasized throughout this channel, is that you have to be specific. Pause the video here right now and just read these 2 examples, number 1 and number 2, and see which one is more specific. Okay, that was probably pretty easy. Obviously, it's the second one, right? The second one talks specifically about using nitrate levels across 5 different sites. They found concentration, and they suggest that there might be a link between development and nutrient pollution. That's great, right? And the great thing about this sentence as well is that when you're specific, you're also probably really word efficient, right? In your abstract, you have to be word efficient. Maximum 250 words. Every single word has to count, right? We don't want a lot of random stuff, right? Every single word in every single sentence must count, and that is what the second example does. That is an example of an abstract sentence that you want to emulate. Now, also, when you're writing an abstract, you want to have a great tone and clarity, right? It should be professional and readable, like the rest of the research paper. You should avoid really complex jargon. The reason is, if you're just throwing in random jargon, some people reading an abstract might not know it because they're still trying to learn the topic, and so that's not great because it's not really informing what it is. And also, if you throw in a lot of complex jargon, you might need to explain it, which is also wasting, words as well. So try to avoid jargon when necessary. If it's absolutely necessary, then please do define it. But I will try to stay away from that in the abstract. And lastly, try not to use citations or figures within like your abstract, right? You're just trying to go boom, 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 straight to the point, right? Here's what we did, the problem, the data, the results, implication, boom. Efficient, hyper efficient. That's what the abstract is about. And the biggest tip, though, by far, is that you should write your abstract last. The first thing that comes in a research paper is the first thing that people read, but it's the last thing that you should write. That's because your abstract, right, is basically your whole research paper condensed down, right? Those things that I talked about, those 5 sections of the abstract, are literally the 5 main sections of your research paper, right? Your introduction, your methodology, your data, your results, analysis, conclusion, implications is the section of the abstract. And you're just basically taking those sections and smushing it down into 250 words. Now, that's much easier than if you wrote your abstract first. Because if you write your abstract first, you might not know what you're going to talk about in those sections about the methodology, data analyses, and conclusion implications that might be important. And so the abstract has to be the most important part of your entire research paper, which is why you should write it last. Ingrain this into your head, write your abstract last. I promise you, it'll make it so much easier. And then also finally, here are some common mistakes that people make. Firstly is too much background. The next thing after the abstract is always the introduction section, right? So you don't need to go too much background, just enough to give the reader what they need to know to understand the methodology and the results in the abstract section. Being unclear about your results, I've seen this before. People just go, we found interesting results. Well, I would hope your results are somewhat interesting if you're writing about them and publishing them, or even like having them being part of a research paper. But this sentence is also not really it's just wasting words. Just get straight to the point. Don't talk about stuff where the information that is not inside of your paper. If you reference something in your abstract, it should be referenced later on in those sections. Don't throw in some random result and then just never bring that result up again in your results section. That's a no-no. And then don't use wordy filler phrases like it should be said that, right? Remember, we want to be super efficient. We don't want to just throw around words just to throw around words. Every single word must count and contribute to your research. So yeah, that's really it. I hope you enjoyed another episode of Research Bites, where we try to deliver you informative information about academia and research in a very efficient and clean format. Hopefully after this, you'll know how to write a pretty decent abstract, what to include and what to avoid. And thank you again for watching the Academia Research Collective, and I'll see you next time.